We're stuck. Hi, this is CC Schatz, and you are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, and I am so excited. We have a brand new show on, and I am, so many times as we're moving through our lives, we say to ourselves, we've got to get healthy. We've got to get healthy. We've got to get healthy. Well, you're going to get healthy with this show because the topic of the show or the name of the show is Living Healthy with Empowerment. And our wonderful host right here live is Eric Ray. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
It is so great to have you.
Thank you so much, Cece.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And then what is our topic tonight? We're going to be talking about...
We're going to be talking about, the topic is quinoa, understanding quinoa.
And guys, I don't even know what, I think it's like a type of rice or something like that, but I guess it has a lot of benefits. And so we're going to hear about that tonight. So I'm going to step out. I'm going to let our new host, Eric Ray, take over. And I'm really excited to find out how I'm going to get healthy right along with you guys. So I'll get back with you later. So enjoy the show.
Thank you so much, Cece, for having me. Very much appreciate the opportunity. I'm just going to give you a little intro about me. Name is Eric Ray. I'm 31 years old, born and raised in Lansing, Michigan. I'm the youngest of three. I have a sister who's 2 years older and a brother who's 4 years older. They both live back in Michigan. They both have kids, so I have one niece and two nephews as well. I try to see them as often as I can. I've been in Florida for about 4 years. My dad is actually the reason I'm here. I pretty much got sick of kind of my old life back in Michigan. Mostly the weather. Felt like I was spinning my wheels in school, sick of my job, and got out of a really toxic relationship. So he made it really easy to move down here. And so shortly after the move, I decided to go back to school to Rasmussen College. And I chose that college mostly because they have an accelerated program where if you're interested in the health and wellness field, you can get a bachelor's degree very quickly. Instead of 4 years, you can knock it out in 2. I'm actually getting mine in less than 2 because they have these assessments you can take. So I've always been interested in health and wellness, always been interested in exercising, eating healthy. I love to learn. I love to do research. And above all, I love to help people. So if any of you at any point ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach my Facebook page at Healthy Ray is one of my pages. You can also just look me up, Eric Ray, in Hudson, Florida. So with that, we're going to be talking about quinoa. First going to give you my outline. I'm going to be discussing the history of quinoa, kind of where it came from, its origins, how long it's been documented in use. Going to be talking about the botany a little bit, as well as the health benefits, some of the food politics. I'm not going to get too much into that. Politics, I know, are kind of boring for some. So then I will end with cooking with quinoa and the storage of quinoa. So the history is that quinoa originates in the Andes region, which is the Andes Mountains of like Bolivia and Peru in South America. It's been documented as being on this planet for at least 7,000 years. Most of my research, I found it was about 3,000 to 4,000 years, how long it's actually been in use, which is why it is often called an ancient grain. It's right there with like millet and spelt and bulgur wheat, buckwheat and farro and a bunch of others. Amaranth is actually one of the ancient grains as well, which is in the same family as quinoa. The Incan people, it was a huge staple in their diet, and they referred to it as the gold of the Incas because it gave Incan warriors extra stamina, which we'll kind of find out why later. And Peru and Bolivia are they're still the 2 leading producers of quinoa in the world. It used to be about 10 years ago, it was about 70% of the world's production came out of those 2 countries. It's a little closer to 40 to 50% now due to the popularity that quinoa now has globally. As far as botany is concerned, it is actually not a grain, botanically speaking. It is actually a seed. In order for something to be a grain, it must be extracted from a grass of some sort, such as wheat. But it's actually a seed. The reason it is called a grain and associated with grains is because they look similar, they cook similar, they taste kind of similar. They just have very similar properties, and it's easier for nutritionists and people in the health and wellness field to just classify it as such. It's actually a relative of beets, Swiss chard, and spinach, which basically what it means is, since it's not a grain, it is gluten-free, which is really important for a lot of people. The whole rise in veganism and vegetarianism, and definitely people with gluten allergies. They can eat all the quinoa they want. It's also a very adaptable crop. It can grow from sea level all the way up to about 4,000 feet up in altitude. And it can also survive in areas that get as little as 3 to 4 inches of rainfall per year, which is pretty incredible. Not a lot of other plants can do that and still be edible. And it also has a wide spectrum of temperature tolerability. It can withstand temperatures from about 17 degrees Fahrenheit to about 100, which again is pretty atypical for a lot of different plants out there. Most plants, like every single plant in my backyard, for example, cannot survive below about 32 degrees, the freezing point. So, which is, it's pretty incredible. It also protects itself from mildew, from disease, and also from a lot of pests, because there's a protein. It's a compound called saponin, saponin, that is it's a waxy, bitter substance. So if an animal or something comes along and doesn't want to eat it, or any insects, they're not interested, because it tastes very bitter. And this compound is actually removed during the production process, but it doesn't necessarily remove all of that coating. So actually, when you get the stuff home, you'll read on the box or the bag that it's recommended to rinse in water, just to get rid of all of that remaining residue. And kind of a side note on that saponin stuff, it originally also comes from a plant, but the Incan people they use the rinse from the quinoa. They use that wash as like soap and shampoo. They use every single part of the plant, which I love. I love when you can do that. And actually, the do-it-yourselfers today will do the same thing. They'll take that compound and they'll use it to make soap or shampoo. It's still around. As far as the health and the health benefits, quinoa is touted as a superfood. I'm sure you've all heard of quinoa as a superfood, if you have heard of it. The primary reason it is called this, is because it contains all 9 essential amino acids. There is no other grain on the planet Earth that contains all 9 essential amino acids. This is, it's a miracle food, really. Amino acids, for those of you who've never heard that term or are unfamiliar with it, are the building blocks of proteins, which you obviously know your body needs. So it has all of the proteins. So it's like eating a steak. You don't need any more protein after eating one of these, or eating a couple serving sizes during a meal. And as I mentioned before, it's also gluten-free. 1 cup of this stuff, 1 cup of quinoa will give you about 222 calories total, about 39 carbohydrates, and they're complex carbohydrates. I'll talk about that in a second too. And only 4 grams of fat. And the fats that quinoa has are healthy fats, kind of the same, like monounsaturated fats, the same kind of fats that like avocados have. Very, very healthy fats for your body. The reason I am interested in mentioning carbohydrates is because I'm sure most of you have heard of carbohydrates. You know what they are. A lot of you probably know simple and complex carbs. Simple carbohydrates are basically, they're simple. They're put together just by a smaller number of sugars, because carbohydrates are sugars. And so it takes a lot less for your body to break those types of carbs down, which means there's a potential spike in your blood sugar, which is a problem for diabetics, any of those with hypertension, potential stroke, or stroke victims. Same thing with heart attack victims, or so on. So it moderates your blood sugar very, very well. And it breaks down slowly in your body. So there's actually a reduction potential in colon cancer and in diverticulitis, a lot of other potential gastrointestinal distress and problems. As far as specifics, contains 5 grams of fiber per serving, 30% of the magnesium you need for your day, 15% iron, which I kind of want to stop on that because women, you need a lot of iron, and I've had a lot of questions from a lot of different women I've come across asking, what foods are high in iron? Because, I know I need it because you get rid of it on a monthly basis. So it's a really good food to just add to your diet. It's not going to give you 100%, but it's a very easy addition to your diet. It's because it's so easy to grow. It's so easy to cook. It's not very expensive. It's just, and it has that iron content. It also has 9% of your daily recommended daily allowance of potassium, 28% phosphorus, 19% of your folate requirement, and 18% copper, 13% of your zinc requirement, and 58% of manganese. And I kind of want to stop on manganese because I was doing a little extra research on manganese, and that helps with it helps formulate connective tissue. It helps with heart function, helps with brain function. It helps with blood clotting. It helps with sexual reproductive organs. So without manganese, I mean, your body's not really functioning optimally. So it's another reason to eat quinoa. There are also traces of omega-3 fatty acids, which I kind of mentioned before. Traces of antioxidants. There's traces of calcium, vitamin E, and B vitamins. B vitamins are very good for energy production. As far as kind of the food politics aspect, in 2013, the United Nations titled quinoa, or they titled the year as the International Year of Quinoa, and it was because quinoa had the demand increased about 18 times within 10 years. Within 1 decade, stuff increased in demand 18 times, which it has to do with our growing food concerns, the lack of food in a lot of areas of the country, but also the rise in veganism and vegetarianism, as I previously mentioned. The issue that it has kind of caused is that in Bolivia and Peru primarily, the 2 producing countries, it's more considered a luxury food item because not everyone can afford it anymore because of the worldly demand. So it's kind of stressed out a lot of the indigenous people to those countries because they can't eat it as much because they essentially can't afford it because basically the rest of the world needs more. So the cost has also increased, as you would expect. 10 years ago, it was about 15 or 16 US cents for a kilo of this stuff, and it increased over that time span by about 7-fold. So now it's about $1.15 to $1.16. So there's a potential issue there. Kind of a potentially optimistic side note of that is that a lot of other countries that have an economic and agricultural advantage can grow this stuff and grow it better than it actually naturally grows in Bolivia and Peru. So it may even itself out. We don't really know if that's going to happen or not, but there's a positive potential. So, and lastly, I will talk about the cooking. As I mentioned, quinoa is very easy to cook and eat and cook just to use in general. The ratio, it's an easy ratio and it's universal. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. It's 2 parts water to 1 part quinoa. So put two cups of water in a pot, boil it, add a little salt, some oil, just a dash or 2, and let it boil. You throw your quinoa in, and you cook it for about 15 minutes on simmer. And then take it off, you cover it, it fluffs up, and it's edible right then and there. The average cup of rice will take about 30 plus minutes. So essentially you can make 2 cups of quinoa for every 1 cup of rice. So huge time savings there, which is kind of important in our rush, hurry society. There are 3 types of quinoa I actually have behind me. The most popular is white or ivory quinoa. The second is the red quinoa, which is red. And the third is actually black, and it's actually the least common. You'll see some speckles in there. There are black specks because it's a blend of actually all 3. It's got the white, the red, and the black. The black is just less common because it's not as cultivated. It's just less popular. There's really just less of it on the earth. So, but a question that I've also gotten is, what's the difference between the colors? Is there a different nutritional aspect? No, there's not. They will all offer the same benefits, same amount of manganese, same amount of calories, same fat, same fiber. It's universal. And I really like to see. I really like to kind of describe quinoa as a white canvas on which to be painted. And I say that about a lot of different foods because there's so much that you can do with it. You can eat it just on its own because it has a great flavor, just naturally. You can add a light dressing. You can add it to you can add it to salads. You can add it to soups, stews. I've had it in chili. You can add it to, you can make desserts with it. Actually, NASA uses the stuff in energy bars for their astronauts when they're going on long trips because of the complete protein, the 9 essential amino acids. They actually use that because it'll help human beings survive in outer space. Pretty awesome stuff. And they're actually looking at growing it in outer space. I believe on the International Space Station, they already have successfully started growing quinoa. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've read it in a number of places. So if it's not actually happening, it's pretty close. We're on the verge. And I actually found a recipe yesterday when I was looking up a couple extra facts. It was a guacamole with quinoa and mango, which I'm going to probably try this weekend. It sounds pretty tasty. Lastly, quinoa is not only sold in its purest form as seed, it is also sold as a flour. It's just ground into a flour. And it's also sold as flakes. The flakes you can use as like an oatmeal. You can sprinkle it on a salad. You can really use it on a wrap in a lot of all the same ways as kind of a filler. And you can also use it kind of as a gum in like if you're making a hot sauce or if you're trying to thin out like a stew or a soup, you can use this stuff and it'll help, thicken up a soup or something like that. A side note about the flour is that I actually purchased this stuff one time. And I used it to make pizza. I actually make a lot of pizzas. I love making pizzas. It's one of my favorite foods. And so I used 50% quinoa flour and 50% bread flour to make a pizza crust. And it had very good integrity. It held together very well. It cooked very evenly. Like I have no complaints about this stuff. It was wonderful to use. I'm going to end on an alcoholic note because everybody likes to drink and have a good time. There's a drink that is actually made with quinoa. Actually, the Andean people still use it. It's a traditional drink. It's called chicha, C-H-I-C-H-A. And it's made with about equal parts corn and quinoa, made by the Andean people, primarily drank in Bogota and La Paz in Bolivia. So that is my presentation. That is everything you need to know about quinoa, at least to get started. Feel free to do your own research. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I love questions. I love researching, and I love to educate other people. And also, if there are any particular topics you'd like me to discuss, feel free, again, to send me a message. I've already had a request to talk about chia seeds, and I think I want to talk about aloe at some point. So I will be more than happy to do some research and give you all the information you want to know. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Wow, Eric, that was really great. Great show. And I learned a lot. I learned a great deal about, I think I'm going to go buy some and try it out. Absolutely.
I hope you do.
I am, because you know what? And every little bitty thing that we can do to try to make ourselves healthier and live longer, we need to do it. So I'm so glad about this show that you're doing. I think it's really going to inspire people to look at what they're eating and, think about it. You can eat something that's still enjoyable, that you still like, and have fun with it. And it's actually good for you. So I hope that we will learn more and more things as we move through your show. So I'm looking forward to it. So now we're going to have your show bi-weekly. So your show will be every other week. It'll be right here on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network at 8 p.m. So we'll do it on Wednesday night every other week. So we're going to miss next week, but then we'll be back with another great show. So thank you so much for doing the show, Eric.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for watching.
It's great. So you are listening to Living Healthy with Empowerment by Eric Ray. And I want to thank you so much for joining us. This is Cece signing off. Bye, Eric.
Bye.